So recently, I sent out some questions to my fellow pilots at flight school. The first two are interesting in this regard, and I'll make them simple here. 1. Were there any problems researching on how to become a pilot? 2. Did you have a long-term vision or plan? The answers I got actually got I had a sigh of relief. Why? Turns out we were all in the same boat. We had very little information to go on, and we're just about going with the flow. So I took this a level higher and asked my former instructor, who's now at the airlines. To my surprise, the same answer. Look, I don't mean to say we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. We all had the burning desire within us. So we did our due diligence, we researched. The problem is that it takes so much effort and time to finally understand how the system works and see the big picture. Only once I had good understanding of how the system works, then I had the certainty and clarity to start. Anyway, this video is going to be long, so if you don't have the attention span to watch, you're probably not really interested in becoming a pilot. But for those who are, I'm going to break it down into a roadmap with first principles. By first principles, I mean bringing things down to its absolute truths and fundamentals. So, at first principles, what is a pilot? Okay, so I have it down as a person who has the skill and knowledge to fly and navigate aeroplanes. By skill, I mean the ability to be good at something. Knowledge, information and understanding of something. So, let's move on. So where does one get these skills and knowledge? At flight school. What flight school is at first principles is really a system designed to transform someone with a desire to fly into a person with the knowledge and skills to safely operate an aircraft. I really like that definition because I think it's very important to understand we do not achieve goals, we achieve identity, we achieve characters. What I mean by this, if I were to take you now, give you the licenses and the certifications to fly a Boeing 737, you'd probably be able to not even switch it on, to be honest. Let's be honest here. And that's because you just aren't the person who has the ability to fly that or even start it up. So it's very important to understand that you are a common denominator in everything that comes towards training, towards your licenses and flying. Alright, so since it's a system, let's talk about how everything affects the system from input, process, output. I assume most people know what a system is already. I assume people have been taught what systems is, but if you don't know what systems is, just a way of organizing or components that act together. So here we have an input, a process, and an output. And we're going to go into the inputs here because inputs govern our outputs. So the inputs into the system is just you, a ton of money, and a medical exam clearance. We'll talk about the medical exam and money later on, but for now it's just the inputs you get here. So the process is you attend flight school, and there's three major sectors you get out of flight school, which is skill development, knowledge acquisition, and assessment and refinement. So skill development is just flight training. This is where you learn to fly one-on-one with a flight instructor. The knowledge acquisition, so you brief one-on-one with your instructor on flight maneuvers before your flight lessons. And then you have ground school, where you just go learn in-depth knowledge about different theoretical subjects around the license or rating that you're doing. Then you will apply that knowledge to written exams. Assessment and refinements is where you write your written exams, you do your post-flight briefs with your instructor, and then you go through dual shaker rides every 10 hours for like your PPL, for example, private pilot's license, where you get tested on your progress. And then we have your initial skills test. So this is for your licenses would be a check ride and oral exam, or for rating just a test, to be honest. That would give you, and as an output, that assessments and a collection of all of those will make you a skilled, knowledgeable, and certified pilot with a license or rating, or maybe both. Alright, so what do I mean by a license? So a license is just something that states the pilot's level, privileges, and limitations on what they can do. A rating is just an add-on that shows you are certified and proficient in a certain area of flying. So you have different types of ratings. You got instrument, night rating, class and category ratings, instructor ratings, type ratings. I'm not going to go into all of that now, but it's just add-ons basically. But that is essentially what flight school is and becoming a pilot is at first principles. So now we'll move on to the actual flow of everything and the path to get to an airline pilot. Alright, the path to airline pilot. So let's see, I got a graphic here to show the flow. So you go to flight school, you get a student pilot's license, you turn into your private pilot's license, you finish your private pilot's license, you do your night rating, then you do your commercial pilot's license, then you get some ratings, more ratings, then you get and test out for your airline transport license. That's a simple overview of it, but we'll see now it gets a bit more complex than that. So let's move on. So there's my disclaimer. This is just based on my experience, and it's in accordance with the South African Civil Aviation Authority, which is just the aviation body of South Africa. It's like the government for aviation in South Africa. Next, we have the abbreviations before we get started: SPL, PPL, CPL, ATPL. So you have those there. So whenever if I talk about a license and I abbreviate it, that's just what it means right there. So CFI, Certified Flight Instructor, AME, Aviation Medical Examiner, ATO, Approved Training Organization, aka Flight School. Okay, so step 1 is the medical exam. Why have this first? If you cannot pass one, it will stop your pursuit of flying. This is done with the Aviation Medical Examiner. So best way to find one, just type in Google Aviation Medical Examiner near me. Some people kick up a fuss about which one they want to go to. If you are one of those people who want to be very specific about who you're going to and see if they recommend it or not, you can look on Avcom, which is just a forum for aviation in South Africa. There's probably a thread on it there somewhere. So for private pilot's license, you'll need a class 2 at minimum. For your instrument rating, commercial pilot's license, and airline transport license, to hold that, you will need a class 1. So when you're starting out, I recommend, if you're going the Part 61 way like me, get a class 2. It'll last longer. I'll show you the graphic on it right now. It's also a bit cheaper. So for my current class 2 medical, I spent around 2,000 Rand. But when you move on, when you have to test out for your instrument, or you have to do instrument training, or you need to test out for your commercial pilot's license, you need a class 1. Alright, so there's some myths around the medical examination. Like, you do a bunch of tests, like you do heart test, obviously pee in a cup, your eye test. But the one thing is, with the eye test, people go on saying, oh, I can't become a pilot because I don't have 20/20 vision. If you have lenses that correct your vision to 20/20, you will pass that part of your test. Okay, but there are some possible reasons for denial. So past medical history, chronic medication, significant hearing loss, refractive eye surgery, pretty invasive stuff. So if you're not sure if you qualify, it's best to consult your GP, your general practitioner, before you go in. Ask them, is there anything that could possibly disqualify me from getting my certificate? If not, if you can't do that, research on the actual SACAA law, which is this link over here. What you want to do is go to click that link, go to technical standards, personalizing, and then go to Part 67, and you should be able to find if you have any conditions that disqualify you there. So this is the validity of your medical certificate. So class 2, when you start PPL, it lasts, most people I believe are going to watch this video is going to be below the ages of 40. So it's 60 months that will last you. And then if you have to upgrade for instrument training, or to get your commercial pilot's license, you need the class 1, which is 12 months there. It'll be a little bit more expensive than the class 2, but you get the point. Alright, so you passed your medical exam, you've got it now. Now let's talk about high school and subjects and stuff like that. First of all, it doesn't matter. People go on about this whole thing of some subjects are better than others, or you need this subject to pass or write exams or get into flight school. You don't. That's a myth. There are some subjects that will set you up for easier time studying for exams, but all you really need is English. You just need to be able to speak English fluently and understand it. Alright, so yeah, I've got some subjects I suggest. So priority 1 year, English. Of course, you need for the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. I can't remember the abbreviation at the moment, but essentially English is the medium for all communication in aviation. So there's levels to it. Level 6 is the highest. I have a level 6 on my license because I am a native English speaker. So if you're a native English speaker, you should be fine. if you went to an Afrikaans school or you're overseas and your mother tongue is not English, then you're probably going to have to go do a test with there's some English proficiency test that your flight school will recommend you to. So next one is priority 1 is geography. So for flight training, in the exams you write meteorology 3 times, and I highly recommend geography for this matter because you learn about weather patterns, climatology in high school geography, and I know that this applies to PPL and CPL, and I have a theory that's going to definitely apply to ATPL also, which is Airline Transport License. Maths, I'm not sure about Maths Lit because I never did it, but what I will tell you was high school level Maths is a lot more difficult than flight training Maths, and there's mostly just calculations for flight training. So the highest standard that high school Maths will give you will mean you'll breeze through flight training Maths. Physics is good to understand the principles of flight, aerodynamics, when you first do your initial briefs, like Newton's laws. Next, we have biology. It's just the human anatomy part that's relevant to human performance. I never did bio in high school, and I can tell you everyone easily passes human performance if they just study the actual aviation textbooks with some effort. You'll easily pass it. Next, so picking a flight school. The factors that go into one is location, budget, aircraft, type of airfield, instructors. It's a lot, and it's going to be too much to break down in this video, so I have to make another video on this. But I'll just break down for now the 2 different types of flight schools. So I'm going to start off with part 141, because part 141 is the one I am not going to right now. I have very little experience or knowledge on this. So part 141 is known as integrated training. It follows a strict full-time structure and schedule similar to university or college. It's more expensive than part 61. Training is intense but faster because the integrated license hour requirements are reduced by the SACAA due to the nature of the training. So for example, you are 43 Air School, you enroll for one of their programs. It'll be estimated to be around 365 days and set you back an estimated of 1.1 to 1.8 million, depending on which course you choose. But it really does save you a lot of stress later on, and it gives you a very solid education and flight training for the rest of your career. So let me move on to part 61. This is what I'm doing. So this is known as modular or the traditional training path. It's the most common one. So how it works is you train towards each license and rating separately by the order I showed on the graphic. You book a plane on a flight school booking system with your flight instructor. It's a very flexible schedule if you book in advance. Look, if you try to book a day in advance, the planes are going to be booked out. So there's normally a backlog of about a couple of days to like 2 weeks, depending on how big the school's fleet is. That also goes into picking a flight school. But also most schools offer pay as you fly, so you just put money into your account, then you can go fly. So yeah, it works out cheaper than part 141. So example, I got Morningstar Flight Academy in Cape Town. You enroll for PPL, night ratings, CPL ratings. No ATPL offered. Its estimated cost to get all above excluding the ATPL is around 600,000. Keeping in mind this is one of the most affordable schools in SA. Cost will be more at other schools such as controlled airports. In this video, so I'll be taking you to the part 61 path because that's where my experience lies. Okay, so step 3, student pilot license. So you've signed up for flight school, you've paid the deposit, you filled out the forms now to fly. Yes, guys, gotta be careful here. This is a license issued for you to train for your private pilot's license and to test out for your private pilot's license. You must be 15 years old in South Africa to hold one. But the key is you don't actually need it to start flight lessons and briefings. What you do need it for is to go on solo flight, which is just past the early phase in your training. So for most people, this will be around after 10 hours to around 20 hours. And you also need to write your exams, which you also can't pass your license up without having your exams. So typically, your flight school will fill in your application and send relevant documents such as passport photos and your medical certificate to the South African Civil Aviation Authority. They have a bit of a latency, so they'll probably take a couple of weeks to 2 months to send through your student pilot's license. So this is the next step, private pilot's license. This is your milestone you're going for right here, the first milestone. So some privileges of this license allow you to permits you to fly as pilot in command for recreational use. It means you can go fly by yourself. You're not allowed to fly. You're not allowed to be compensated for flying. That's the one catch to it. So you can't be paid for taking people flying, but you can split the cost of the flight between you and passengers equally. So if you go flying with someone in a two passenger plane, it's 1,000 rand. You have to split it. The max you can do is 500 each. So yeah, but the main thing about this, it's a stepping stone. The private pilot license is a stepping stone to help you build your hours towards your commercial pilot license. So the requirements for one, you have to be 17 years old to test out. The legal minimum requirement to test out is 45 flight hours, completed all theoretical exams, and holding a restricted radio license to do your skills test. I know I didn't add that there because it's at the bottom. This consists of 25 hours of dual instruction and 15 hours of solo flight time. The subjects to pass with 75%. This is for your theory exams. The flight school will have a dedicated section with laptops to access the exams, which are monitored with cameras. So the subject you'll use air law. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's just law. Human performance. This is all the factors that go into affecting how flying and human anatomy goes together. Meteorology, that's what I was talking about, is weather patterns, climatology. That's what goes into met there. So geography is pretty useful. Aircraft technical in general, also self-explanatory. This is basically the engine to the aircraft. What is this now? The airframe. All the systems involved with that. And then we have navigation, which is your map work. Then you have principles of flight. So it's learning basically what lift is, drag, that kind of stuff. Then we have flight planning and performance, which is mostly just performance graphs and calculations on mass and balance and other performance factors, what affects the performance of the aircraft. Right, so yeah, also noted down there now. So also required to hold a restricted radio license. To get that, you have to go to a brief, or basically a lecture of a restricted radio, then a practical test in the simulator, or in person with the instructor. For my restricted radio license, I did the in person. I think the practical test in the simulator is now the standard now in South Africa, but that's very much word of mouth information to get right now, so I don't have that. And a written restricted radio exam, which is the same. It'll be similar to the air law human performance exams. You'll do it at the flight school on those laptops in the dedicated section. So duration 3 months to a year, depending on your schedule. I know guys finished in 3 months, and then I myself took about 7-8 months to do it. So the cost of a PPL is about 120,000 rand to 300,000 rand. This depends on the school and your skill. The school, because the plane higher and the instructor rate may be higher than other schools. The skills, this really just means if you take 10 hours to go solo, or if you go solo on 15 hours, a bit more hours you took to get to that point. So it means you spent more money and more time. So that's what I mean by skill there. Alright, but that's basically the one bit. You've got your one milestone there completed. Alright, the night rating. So this allows you to fly at night, must hold a valid private pilot's license, and you have to so this is what's required. This is 5 hours of theoretical briefings on night flying and basic instrument flying with your instructor. You have to write the night rating exam and pass with 75% or more, conducted in South African Civil Aviation approved examination center, which will be your flight school again. Instrument training, 5 hours in the simulator, dual instruction, so your instructor will be there with you. Instrument training in the aircraft, also dual instruction, 5 hours. So that'll be 10 hours of instrument training in total. But this 10 hours, 5 of it can be done in the simulator, but 10 of it could all be done in the plane also. So then next is you have to have done 5 hours of general night flying, which include a cross country and circuits at an airport. So night flight test to examine your ability to fly on instruments and at night with a grade 2 flight instructor. This can take 2 weeks or a month, but I took about a month with it. and it costs around 30,000 Rand to 50,000 Rand. Okay, up next, the second big one, the commercial pilot's license. This is a big one. If you get this, you can be compensated to fly. I'm going to break your hopes in a couple of minutes, but let's go through the requirements here. So, minimum age to do your CPL skill test is 18. A valid private pilot's license with a night rating has to be held before you test. A general radio license, similar protocol to restricted, just more advanced. So it's brief, the practical test, and then the written exam also. So now you have to pass all the commercial pilot's license theory exams with 75% or more, just like the other exams. But the catch is, not your flight school now, at an outstation venue of the South African Civil Aviation Authority. So in Cape Town, this is by Cape Town International, the office there. And then there's one in Mossel Bay, Port Elizabeth, Midrand. So you'll just have to do your Google research when you get to that time, or ask around when you get to that point. So the exams to pass: instruments and electronics, radio aids and communication, meteorology, human performance, air law, aircraft technical and general, flight planning and performance, navigation. So you can see we have some recurring subjects here that we're building on, and then we got 2 new ones here also. So to get in terms of the flight time, you need 200 hours of flight time to test out for your commercial pilot's license. So there's the breakdown of it. You need a minimum of 100 hours of piloting command, so you need to be the one in controls flying the airplane. 100 hours. You need a minimum of 10 hours of piloting command, so of that 100 hours, 10 of it must be at night. A minimum of 50 hours cross country if you're doing your commercial pilot's license with instrument rating. We'll talk about that also later on. Minimum 20 hours cross country if your commercial pilot's license without your instrument rating, and a minimum of 20 hours instrument flight time, 10 hours maybe in a simulator. So if you've done your night rating, you've already done 10 hours of that, so you only just need to do another 10 hours. So you can do the same breakdown as night rating again, which is another 5 hours in the simulator and another 5 hours in the plane. So during this hour building process, it's common practice to do your instrument rating. I will explain this rating in the next steps. With your CPL, I would recommend it. It's what I plan to do later on my training. It's also a good idea to do your multi-engine rating if you can afford it. So the total cost, depending on school and plane hire, just for CPL alone is around 270,000 Rand to 480,000 Rand. If CPL with instrument rating, 300,000 to 550,000. Since the hour requirement is high, you'll most likely at full-time rate be ready to test in 6 months. Mine is going to be 2 years now, but it really depends on your time and how much you can fly. So 6 months can be the upper limit, but the amount of time you have legally is 36 months after your last exam. So if you use your full 1.5 years, you have 1.5 years to complete your exams, your commercial pilot's license exams. And then after that, if you do not complete all your flight hours and test out 36 months later, which is basically 3 years later, then you have to rewrite your exams again. But technically you could be doing this for as long as possible if you're okay with rewriting your exams. And trust me, you do not want to rewrite these exams. They are not fun to write at all. Alright, next is your ratings. So these ratings are essential to becoming an airline pilot. Here is the instrument rating and multi-engine rating. So instrument rating, it allows you to fly in bad weather, so it allows to fly in clouds, precipitation, if the plane can handle it. That if you can't see outside, then that's basically the rating that allows you to fly. Multi-engine rating, so this allows you to fly with more than one engine. Pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing stopping you from doing these ratings before your CPL skill test. In fact, I would highly recommend doing your instrument rate training after writing all your CPL exams, since your instrument exam touches on topics from each subject. You have to write an exam for your instrument rating. And within your instrument training, with your commercial pilot's license, 100 hours minimum of piloting command still means you're going to have somehow you're gonna have to still build your hours more, and instrument training is a good way to fill that time if you want to be constructive with it, really. But to do your CPL with your instrument rating is a bit harder, but like I said, it's worth it. Instrument rating by itself, if you decide to do it afterwards, or you don't want to go down the commercial pilot's license route and you just want to do your instrument rating, it's 80,000 Rand to 100,000 Rand. It requires 40 minimum instrument hours. Having done your commercial pilot's license and night rating means you only need to do another 20 hours, of which 10 of those can be in the simulator. So again, it's that notion of the instrument hours have already been built up, so you only have to do a certain amount now instead of the full, because you've accumulated them. With the multi, instead of with your commercial pilot license, you can afford it 45,000 Rand to 65,000 Rand. You don't need to write an exam for this. It's pretty much training with an instructor and then testing. Then they approve you to fly a multi-engine. But if you can't afford to pay for your multi-engine rating, for some reason you don't want to get it yet, the best bet would then be to get your instructor's rating, which is around 50,000 Rand to 60,000 Rand, and get a job. Once you're hired, then you can save money and pay for your own multi-engine rating. So step 6 is the real hour building now. So this is a drop. Commercial pilot's license hour building is a drop in the ocean compared to this. So airline transport license requirements is 1,500 hours. So if you think about it, PPL, you tested out 45 hours. CPL, you tested out at 200 hours. Now for your airline transport license, you can only test out at 1,500. Now you may thinking now, oh no, how am I going to pay from 200 to 1,500 hours? The trick is you don't, really. Typically, by the time you finish your ratings, you'll be around 200, 250 hours. And the thing is, with the commercial pilot's license, I said you can be compensated to fly, but it's very unlikely that you're going to get a job straight out, because no one wants low time 200, 250 CPL graduates. So the best option here is to go down the flight instructing route. So I don't want to generalize it, that's just the way the system currently works at the moment. So you go get your flight instructing rating, like I was talking there earlier, which is around 50,000 to 60,000, and then you can teach people how to fly, get paid, and get hours. So it's not just a great way to build hours. Teaching people is an important fundamental skill that will give you a list of quality characteristics which airlines like. This is what I've read on forums, so don't come at me if this is not what they think. But typically they hire instructors. It's always instructors. So around 700 hours, but it can also be as early as 500 hours. If you made some good connections or you were lucky, you'll find yourself doing some private charter flights on single engine or Medivac, or with another charter company. So here, for example, we have Air Mercy on the side for full time, or there's one example I didn't put here. Federal Airlines, you can fly a Cessna Grand Caravan for them. Since you had 500 hours, you meet their insurance requirements. The insurances dictate that they can't hire pilots with certain amount of hours less than the stipulated, such as 500. So maybe you get lucky and you get in the seat of a Cessna Caravan at 500 hours. So step 7 is your airline transport license. Must be 21 to test out, hold a valid CPL, your ratings, of course, class 1 medical, start doing your exams before reaching 1,500 hours, which include meteorology, aircraft technical in general, radio aids, instruments, navigation, flight planning and performance. You get some recoding subjects here again. It's a lot less than before, but they are much more difficult than a commercial pilot's license. So the 1,500 hour requirement there, I'm not going to go into depth on this because you will go into depth on this when you reach that point, but that's just there. Here it is. If you want to write it down now, pause and write it down. But once you've reached these requirements, and you test out, you pass, congratulations. You're not an airline pilot now. I had it wrong there, but you do have your airline transport license. Now you can apply on the job market to airlines. mostly regional airlines at this point are the ones who are going to take you. That's why I put them down there. So you've got Airlink, FlySafair, Semi, Lyft. But then, then the actual job thing comes out. So you apply, and most of the time you only hear back from Airlink and Semi, as they're the most in demand for pilots at the moment. And they're the ones who do their training in-house compared to Safair, which doesn't do its training in-house. It sends their candidates to an outside facility in South Africa to get their ratings, which I'll talk about now. So you'll go through the stages of interviewing, such as normal questioning interview, psychiatric evaluation, simulating, and then with the panel. If you make it far enough into the process, you get an offer and option to sign a training bond for the type of rating to fly the jet they hire you for. Type rating is just a rating which allows you to fly a certain manufacturer and model of a complex narrow body or wide body aircraft. The training bond will take about, because that's what it's called, a training bond, will take 1 to 3 years to pay off, depending on the jet. Training processes take 3 to 6 months to get indoctrinated to company policies and type rating on the plane, and then to do your line check.
Career options. So yes,
airline is the most mainstream path these days because it's relatively predictable and consistent. Like we've just said now, you go to flight school, you become a flight instructor after you finish, build your hours to 1,500, and then you go to a regional here in South Africa like Airlink, Semi, Safair, or Lyft. Then if you want to go progress further into your career, then you can move over to long haul flights. You move to a company like Emirates, for example. For different countries, there's different rings or loops you have to jump through. Moving to the Middle East, like Dubai, for example, it's much easier to convert your airline transport license to a GAA license in the UAE than it is to try and transfer your ATP to an FAA American ATP, for example. So that is some research you are going to have to do later on in your career. I'll probably bring on some more research on this when I actually find out more about this or interview someone.
That's basically the airline
part. It's pretty predictable.
Flight instructing is a great
option too. The problem is the lack of growth opportunities. So you go from grade 3 to grade 2, then you can go to grade 1 or chief flight instructor. The pay is not that good. Mostly it's because it's used as a stepping stone to build hours. But some people do find it very enjoyable, and they do enjoy the aspect of teaching people daily. So if that is you, and you're quite happy living below your means, it's a great way to go. Bush charter flying is also a common path after doing a couple hundred hours to meet the charter insurance requirements. Companies like Fairdair and West Air will sweep you up to fly on their fleet. Yeah, I have caravans, but it can be pretty much whatever they think you could fly on. It goes to remote locations like game reserves or middle of nowhere in Namibia. But yeah, that's basically the bush charter side. Private corporate, I have no answer for this. I've tried looking into South African one, but it appears to be very who you know. I hope to speak to someone pretty soon who can give me some more background on the side of the industry. But based on the other countries I've researched and YouTubers I've watched, it basically comes down to shaking the right hand at the right time at the right place, or having connection. So I do plan digging deep into some other guys. So yeah, just letting you know on that one. Anyway, let's close the video off now. So now you should understand. You go to flight school. You get handed your student pilot's license that you apply for. You get your private pilot's license. You do your night rating. You build your hours to your commercial pilot's license. And then you do your ratings here to make yourself stand out more. And then you do your flight instructor's rating to build your hours. And then in between your ratings and your airline transport license, you either get a job as a flight instructor, or you flight instruct for a little bit, and then you end up at a charter company, and then you build your hours to 1,500, and then you test out for your airline transport license, and then you can apply for the airlines. All right, guys. That's it. See you. Bye.